Hi, my name is Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. And this knit tip teaches you how to provisionally cast on stitches onto Stitch Saver. I have been doing this technique for quite some time and do have a longer provisional cast on video that teaches this technique, but I've found that a lot of people would love just like a quick deep dive into how to do it, and I am happy to share that with you. If you don't know what provisionally cast on stitches are, provisionally cast on stitches are done at the beginning of a project so that you can go back and use live stitches later. Sometimes this is done with scrap yarn and a crochet hook, and this technique uses Stitch Saver. It uses 2mm hollow silicone tubing to cast on with your working yarn. So let me show you how to do that. So I've got a length of Stitch Saver right here, and I've got my working yarn. And the first thing that I'm going to do is take my working yarn and make a slip knot, and then take that slip knot and put it on to my Stitch Saver. It's important for me to tell you that we'll be taking that slip knot off later, and it does not count as a stitch. So once you have that slip knot on to your Stitch Saver, what you're going to do is take your working needle and go underneath your working yarn, and that is your first stitch right there that is going over your needle. And now I'm going to dip in front of my Stitch Saver, grab my yarn and bring it onto the needle, and now I have 2 stitches on my needle. And then I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to dip down and grab. So you can see that every time I work this, I get 2 stitches on my needle. I'll just continue to do this. If you need to watch this a little bit more slowly, you can back up and watch it again. You can change the speed on YouTube if you want to, but it's a really easy 2-move maneuver. Now you can see that I have an even number of stitches cast onto my needle right now. If your pattern calls for an odd number of stitches, what I like to do is cast on the even amount and then just drop that last stitch. And then you just kind of need to hold your yarn tight as you turn around, and then you begin to work by grabbing another needle and then knitting or purling, whichever your pattern says to do. One thing that's very important to say with this technique is if your pattern calls for scrap yarn and a crochet hook, normally then there is a setup row with your working yarn. If you are working this technique instead of using the technique in your pattern, then you're going to skip that setup row and move ahead to the next row, because the act of doing this over your Stitch Saver creates that first row of knitting. And that's a big difference that can kind of trip people up. So I like to make sure that you know that. Now, let's say you've knit for a bit. Let's look at what that looks like on your needles. So right here, I have a swatch that I have knit. There is the provisional cast on that I did onto the Stitch Saver. And then there is that little slip knot right there. Let's say my pattern says to go back to my provisional stitches and put them back onto your needle. Now with the Stitch Saver, that is so easy. What you will do is grab your needle and then put it into the tube, making sure that you put it in there pretty tightly so that it doesn't fall off. And now you can just pull that needle through all of the stitches on your needle. But when you get to that slip knot right there and you pull your Stitch Saver off, you're just going to want to drop that slip knot and let it go, because remember, that didn't count as a stitch. And now you have those live stitches on a needle, and you can do whatever it is that your pattern wants you to do, whether it is grafting or knitting in the other direction. You could use this at the beginning of a sweater if you're not sure how long you want your sweater to be and you want to have those stitches to come back to later to do the bottom border or hem. You could do this on a scarf if you are not sure how long it's going to be able to be, given how much yarn you have. There are a lot of applications for provisionally cast on stitches, and I'm excited to see you adding this to your knitting technique repertoire. Thank you so much for watching. Please do ask any questions that you have below. Please subscribe to my channel. I try to release one of these tips once a month. I love sharing them with you. Let me know if there is a tip that I haven't filmed yet that you would love to see. I'd love to make that for you. Thank you so much. Happy knitting.